Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another one of our insane, unbelievable custom tactic videos that you guys have been absolutely loving recently. So that has been amazing, just amazing to see your support, and I do really appreciate it. And just a quick note, just wanted to say that I know some people obviously will try out these tactics and maybe they won't work for certain people. Not every tactic is going to suit every play style. It's not going to work for everybody. So if you don't want to try the tactics out and they don't work for you, then you're more than welcome to go and try another tactic. That is all well and good. Not every tactic is going to work for everybody perfectly. But without further ado, going into our tactic today is the 4-3-2-1. These are the tactics that I settled on. Now, this 4-3-2-1 was a little bit difficult for me to kind of really tweak around and find the best custom tactics. It took one of the longest amount of times of kind of just finding a good balance and a good set of tactics. Today, these are the ones we settled on. So defensive style, normally we like to go pressure on heavy touch. I ended up settling on balance. The main reason was because this formation is quite a narrow formation, and the lack of a CDM and a cam means pressing is quite easy. You know, it's quite easy for your opponent to play out, and obviously being a narrow formation, you know, it means the wings are often open, so they're an easy out ball. And then once they get beyond your front line, there's no then cam to back them up, so it's just then straight into your flat midfield. And then once they get beyond your flat midfield, straight into your back four. So there's kind of, it's very easy for your opponents to play against the press. So in this formation, it doesn't work. So I decided to stay on balance, give me the best balance, and that worked very, very well. Defensive width, I went for around 6, just went for something slightly wider again. This formation is a little bit too narrow for my liking. I do think I want a slightly wider formation, you know, just covering the wings. I just found that when I went sort of on 4, the wings were very, very open. You know, we don't have any wide midfielders or wide cams to kind of cover, like maybe in a 4-2-2 or something. So in this formation, the out ball was very, very easy for my opponents. The wings were quite open. So I went for around about 6, just kind of split up my midfield a little bit because they are quite compact. I think you can have a little bit more space in there, and that worked very, very well. Depth on 6, really like using depth on 6 for pretty much all formations. You know, I don't really get countered. You know, do get countered, but it's never really leads to many goals, so it was never really an issue playing on 6 depth. The thing that gave me the most trouble in this formation was the offensive style. This was the thing that was the trickiest to kind of work with, because none of them really worked super effective. Balance was okay, but it was lacking in some areas, and it just didn't quite have the flow. You know, fast build up, I'm not a huge fan of fast build up really in any formation. I think it leaves you open for way too many counters than what it's worth. Obviously, it does benefit you if you're someone who likes to play really quickly, then fast build is perfect for you. But for me and my play style, it just didn't work. I just find that you get countered more than you're rewarded for it. So you're not a huge fan of that. And possession, I thought possession was going to be the one for this formation, because I thought the lack of cam to link up between the midfielders and the strikers, I thought, okay, maybe possession is going to be the way to go. Maybe a slower play style, you know, just play a little bit shorter and build the ball up shorter. And it did work, but I think against really good opponents, it won't work effectively, because I think really good opponents will be able to slot back in, you know, get into their defensive low block shapes, and then it doesn't really work, you know. So against, I think, top tier opposition, possession didn't work. So the thing I ended up settling on was long ball. Now, it worked probably the most effective out of all of them. The thing that really didn't work with this formation is that lack of an attacking midfielder. It did make it a little bit difficult, because when I did turn the ball over, those front 3 were out of the game, and then I didn't have like a cam or anything to go and press to try and then win the ball back. So it was just the link up play wasn't quite there. So I thought, you know what, we haven't got a cam, so we can't link it up through, you know, tiki taka. So we may as well just use long ball, and it worked very well for this formation. Offensive width, I went on 5. Normally I like to go with around 3 to get the wide players involved, but because this formation is already quite narrow with the left and right forwards, I just left it on standard. And I found it worked. I think when I went on 3, it was way too narrow. Like, everybody was just standing on each other's toes. So 5 worked very, very well. And then players in the box, corners and free kicks doesn't really make too much of a difference. So we keep them standard as usual. Then moving on into the instructions, Allison, goalkeeper, of course, comes for crosses, and sweep keeper. That's the way we always like to play. We then got the fullbacks on stay back while attacking and overlap, and the 2 centre backs on stay back while attacking and conservative interceptions. Now, Varane and Van Dijk played really, really well in this formation. It has to be said. They're a good partnership, and they worked very, very well. And the conservative interceptions actually was a weird one, because I found that they weren't jumping into as many tackles as normal, but I found that I was winning then more challenges. So it was very, very effective. You know, I just noticed in a few games that I played yesterday that they weren't diving into as many tackles, but I felt myself coming away with the ball a lot more, because rather than them lunging in, I was going in when I wanted to, rather than them going in for me. Fullbacks on stay back while attacking is a must for this formation, because if you have them going forwards, man, you have no real wing cover in this formation. You know, you don't have wide cams or wide midfielders to help, even if it's just to get in the way maybe of the potential pass. So these guys have to stay back while attacking. We've then got Alan, who's a central midfielder. I used on drop between defenders and stay on edge of the box. Now this was extremely effective. Works very well in this formation, that central guy. It kind of drops in, Alan kind of drops in there and makes that sort of, you know, third centre back. So when the fullbacks do push on, which they do sometimes, they do get involved at the very least in the build-up play. You know, he drops in and he makes kind of a third centre back. And it sometimes in counter attacks, more importantly, it almost becomes a back five. So it makes it a little bit easier for you on counter attacks. You know, if maybe Sissoko and Mole are out of position, you know that you can just pull Alan out of that back five, and you can use him to stall and wait for the other guys to get back in position. So Alan on drop between defenders was super effective and works really well in this formation. We then had Sissoko on stay back while attacking and stay on edge of the box. The reason why I did that was just have a little bit of extra cover, you know, because on occasions for counters I did find that I was maybe a little bit too open, and sometimes I was having to control my centre back a little bit too much. You know, I was having to bring him out of position, just to not to necessarily press the ball, but just kind of, you know, slow the guys' counter attack, wait for my midfielders to get back into a position where I could start running with them. So I had Sissoko on stay while attacking, just to give me a little bit more cover. You know, and Sissoko being quite a defensive midfielder, I think it suited him quite well. But that meant that we were able to use Mole on get forward. Now the reason why I used Mole on get forward and free roam, so he could almost become that link up from the midfielders to the strikers, because the biggest negative with this formation is that lack of an attacking midfielder. You know, it can be quite difficult to link up from the midfield to the strikers. So I wanted to have Mole on get forward and free roam, so he would kind of get into that attacking position, and maybe when Alan and Sissoko pick the ball up, they can give it to Mole, who's in a more forward position, and then he can then pass it on to Mane, Owen or Neymar. So that worked really well. You know, it takes a little bit of getting used to, because it's a little bit odd. You know, it doesn't quite feel very natural to play that way. But after I settled in, the first 2-3 games, it didn't really work. But after I played once I get sort of games 6, 7, 8, it really started to click. Once I started to understand. And that's really important, to not just try this for like 1 or 2 games and go, man, it doesn't work. It took me 6, 7 games before because you have to understand then what Mole's position is and where the runs he makes, what positions he picks up. And after about 6, 7 games, I kind of started to understand how then to use this formation and use these instructions. And it was really effective. It was probably, I couldn't really find a better way to get it involved. We then move up to Neymar, Owen and Mane. Now, we had all of these guys on stay central and getting behind. Now, the reason why we did Mane and Neymar on stay central is I wanted to play to the strengths of this formation. It's quite a narrow starting formation. So if you are struggling and you maybe find they are a little bit too narrow, you can drop these guys to balance width and they will provide a little bit of width. But the thing about doing that is they're gonna be a little bit more difficult to get involved in the attacking play. And I just found that when they're on balance, they're a little bit too wide. And in the attack, those 3 are so important. They're really your 3 guys that need to link up. Because of that lack of an attacking midfielder, those 3 guys have to link up really well. They really have to be close together. So it just makes it very easy to link up and potentially create chances. So those guys on stay central and getting behind worked really well. Worked well with that long ball tactic as well. So that is it for the 4-3-2-1. As I said, this formation and these tactics, they require more than just 1 or 2 games. If you play them for sort of 8, 9, 10 games, you should start seeing the benefits. And if you know what, after 8, 9, 10 games, you don't see the benefits, then maybe these just aren't the tactics for you. It was difficult. It was probably the most difficult in terms of finding a set of tactics that worked for this formation. You know, it is a good formation, but I do think there are better ones out there. But if you do like this formation, I think these are probably the best tactics that I personally could find and that suited the way I like to play. So hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy the video, make sure you drop a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel. But that is all today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.